This is Karen with newclevelandradio.net, and it is time for the Intentionality Gurus with Candace Pollock. And today we're talking about reimagining Maslow's hierarchy of needs, the triangle that's also like a spiral. And that is a little confusing to me because the hierarchy of needs, don't you have to go one step at a time
And
to get
that's
to
my
the
point.
achievement?
Thank you
Yeah.
for that. So we did not talk about this before, but
Yeah.
I'm glad that, yes, it is confusing, but as inevitably in any of the ideas or the conversations or writings about moving forward with goals and self-expression and all of the things that we talk about, Maslow's triangle can be brought up, and it often is brought up. And what occurred to me is, unfortunately, the triangle kind of suggests that things are static, that you don't get to move to the next level until you've, taken care of the base level. So for people that are not familiar with Maslow's hierarchy of needs, the idea is that was a psychologist, and he basically came up with this concept, just a mental concept, that humans are motivated to fulfill their needs in a particular order, and they can't fully enjoy higher levels of evolution, so to speak, psychological safety and expression until they have taken care of their base needs, and then they can move to higher and higher needs. So I'll send a link to you that will include a picture of it, but the basic need is our physiological needs. And in essence, that is going to be that we have food and shelter and sex. Apparently, that is but it's the species needing to continue to exist and propagate itself.
Right.
And then the idea is, and this is maybe not his intent, is then we can move to our safety needs. And these are going to be things such as uh, taking care of, being safe, having love, having relationships and belonging, our esteem, and basically, having a place in our society. And then eventually we move up a little further and we have the idea of um, the self-actualization. And the whole idea for me, as I was pondering this for some reason, was, geez, I'm never going to get to self-actualization because I'm still working on these other levels. And then it occurred to me, well, I'm not working on these things on other levels in every area. So then it occurred to me, well, why don't we think of it as a spiral where we're spiraling up and down? It's a fluid kind of, as we bump into a barrier, we might bounce back to a lower level, more primitive level, and so on. And as we've talked in the programs that I offer, um, you know, we're ebbing and flowing, and it's not all black and white. So I'm sure he did not mean, I did some research, and basically, I want to experience some self-actualization and not have to work through all of the levels. I recognize that I'm going to have to work through some of them, but I want to say before I die that I actually got to be self-actualized, whatever I think that means. So
Sure.
what do you think? So what is triggering that in you when I say these things?
Well, it's interesting because I had a client last week who said to me, you know, have you really reached your pinnacle of where you want to be? You're coaching, you're podcasting, you're doing all these things. And my comment to her was, I've reached it, but now there's another reach. And she didn't understand that. Her thinking was, she was going to get into coaching and, I was going to help her go from one step to another. And then she'd be able to say, aha, I did it. And I said, but something else is going to come in and sort of affect that or alter your thinking. And so now you're going to move on to something else. And she totally did not get it. It was like, you know, I think when we're children, we're sort of brought up to believe that, hey, if you take that step, you're going to be able to walk around the world. And you can walk, around the world, but you may not get all the way around the whole circumference of it. Make
Yeah,
sense?
so in this context, I mean, so the word that, when I was digging deeper into this, I found out that I'm not the only person that had this thought. That was a bit of a disappointment. I'm just teasing. But they say there is no original thought, but I'm glad that at least I had it. But the idea is that context is really important. So when we're little, we have a limited view of the world, and there's a lot of things we obviously don't know yet. And part of life is, the opportunities and challenges that present to us and how we respond to them, and a bunch of other things. But, I just love the idea of thinking of it as a spiral, and then thinking of the spiral, not like a tornado or a hurricane, but something along those lines that, the wind is going up and down in intensity. Maybe I'll think of a tornado because that's the one that tends to suck things up into the spiral. The house may be going around, and that's just one of the little currents of air that's getting swooped up. And then in another current, there may be I don't know, a barn or something. That's what we always see in the movies, and so on. So that each one of those swirls, each one of those currents can represent a different area of life. So one might be health, one might be our work endeavor, another may be our hobby endeavors, the other may be our relationships, and so on, the areas of life that we have. And they may not all be at the same level. And so when I was, maybe it's just me, but when I was thinking of the hierarchy of needs, I thought, well, if I don't have it really solid in terms of the lower levels, the uh, physiological needs and the safety needs in terms of having relationships and social connection and so on, and then the esteem and confidence levels, etc., then I'm just not going to reach that pinnacle. It represented to me, and maybe it's just me, kind of an all or nothing situation. But when I started thinking of it as a spiral, it just really opened up. Okay, then I think I can articulate that some things I do have, glimmers, maybe a little fingernail hold on self-actualization, although I wouldn't want to test the gods and, even
Yeah.
say that out loud, because, life will teach me a lesson, which is just one of those little goofy things that, I probably picked up in my childhood. Um, so anyway, I just wanted to open up that conversation to the idea that we can think about these needs, that they're still there, psychological and physiological and so on. But how do we now take that and make something of it? So in your life, what do you think? If I may be
Well,
so bold as to
yeah.
make you the guinea pig again.
Yeah. So yesterday I ended up writing a blog about life is messy. And um, we believe, for some reason, as humans, we want to believe that life can be perfect, but it's not going to be because, like you've just described, there are little tornadoes that, can hit us at any time. So we may feel secure in one area of our life, and, you know, we've got those needs. Now we want more than what we have. And sometimes that creates that spiral that confuses us. Like if everything was okay a few minutes ago, why now that I'm trying to go for more, am I spiraling out of control? And I think we have to understand that that's part of evolving, part of growing, part of understanding what's happening in life.
Yeah, and it gives us an opportunity. So, here we can look at this challenge and say, well, wait a minute, there's an opportunity here. So if we're looking at this hierarchy, and let's just pretend that, it's his theory and it has had its pushback over the years. But we can, one, recognize that it's multidimensional. It isn't just those layers. And it's those little swirly loops, the house, the car, the barn, all of them circling around and at maybe different heights in that cyclone or tornado. And then we are given the opportunity by choice or by luck, good or bad, to revisit some of the places we've been, on a deeper level, maybe more nuanced level. And that's the part I love, and particularly for this time of year. And so I'm going to be opening up a program in February, kind of a gift to yourself for Valentine's Day. And these are going to be some of the topics that we are going to be talking about. And so there was a feeling of being less compartmentalized, which is what the triangle kind of does. And again, he did this in the 1950s for Pete's sakes. And look how many things have evolved since then. I mean, internet, yes, there were probably some inklings of all of that, but certainly not in our palm, literally, with our phones and everything else, little kids growing up with this as a given kind of a deal. So the idea is, and then also for the different areas of our life. So where we may feel self-actualized, say in a relationship, we may not feel that, or maybe financial security, or even emotional security in terms of a relationship. It may not show up in terms of our creative expression. We may not be there yet. And I just love the idea of saying, okay, it's not an all or nothing conversation. And then how does that make me think this, particularly this time of year when we tend to be, a lot of people, I shouldn't probably be that black and white or
Right.
broad, are, pondering things about, okay, this was one period of time this year. Some people are doing resolutions, and I like to call them reaches or possibilities. What comes next, and how does that show up here without the inkling of I haven't arrived yet. I'm not at self-actualization unless it's 100%.
Well, one of the
So,
things that I notice is that, and this happens to me a lot on the weekend, and maybe it's because my schedule changes with my husband home, and our schedule is not always the same every weekend. Um, but I find that I wake up on Saturday morning with, feeling content that, I've got everything in place. And then either he says something or I say something or one of us does something. And it's like that whole thing gets all shaken up like a snow globe.
mhm.
And, you're trying to like, well, like what happened? Okay. Everything was fine a minute ago, but it took one word, one action to sort of stir it up. And in the past, I always used to hold on to that disturbance, not try to figure it out, just hold on to it and carry it around with me. But now I look at it and, it's like, okay, I got disturbed, but what is good about it? You know, am I safe? Do I have my shelter? Do I have those things that I need? And if I can admit that I'm okay, I can then get through that turbulence and look at it a little differently and not succumb to it.
So what happened when you used to hold on to it? So why was that an element?
Um, because it would create a lot of tension between the two of us. And I didn't really get on with whatever it was that I wanted to do that day. Um, all I felt was this black cloud hanging over me. So everything I felt like I was doing, I wasn't doing it as adequately as I wanted to. And so I carried this negativity with me and didn't realize at the time that I could like look at it and say, okay, let's take this to a different level. Let's not hold on to it. Let's work through it. And it makes it it makes me feel more secure.
So the idea is, if I'm hearing it the way you want me to hear it, um, that in the past you would have maybe held on to it and it would have stopped you in some ways, not able to like acknowledge it maybe to yourself or not even know that you could or that it was there, and also certainly not to others that you may be interacting with at the time.
Right.
Okay, and then after you had some thoughts about, okay, how can I change this up, or what is this about? It opened up opportunities to engage again. And then what did that do?
Um, it takes, for me, it takes away the negative component of it. It's like, okay, so maybe this didn't work the way I expected it to, but there's a way to make it work, and maybe it's going to be different. And that's what I need to feel whole, is to get things to work rather than hold on to it and have it work against me.
So rather than having it the way you thought it should be or would be, you could see it that it could be another way that still met some of your needs.
Exactly.
Okay. And in some ways that might actually meet more of your needs in the long term. The beneficial byproduct, maybe unintended byproduct, is it may actually, if let's just use the triangle as an example, it may actually move you from one level to another level in the triangle because you could kind of check the box on, okay, yeah, my safety needs are in place, my, social connections and esteem and those things are in place. I can now be open to take it to another level and so on. And I love that in terms of the spiral, because on one level there was a little bit of upset. That would be one of the little spiraling currents. But on another level, you could step outside of yourself and see, you know, it's all in those few inches between your ears.
Right.
I mean, quote unquote, all you did was change your perspective by what, maybe 2 or 3 degrees, maybe 80 degrees. It doesn't matter. You're just seeing more in your frame of reference.
Right.
I love
And,
that. Love it.
and when you look at the hierarchy of needs, the interesting part is we all need basically the same thing, but at different levels. Okay.
Mhm.
Um, my husband and I have a friend who lives out in California, and she lives in her truck. She is the happiest person that I've ever met, but she chose she's got a roof over her head. She's got wheels to take her places. She's got her dog in her truck. Um, and she's happy. Now, to me, my need is having, a home. And um, so we're both being taken care of the way we each personally want to be taken care of.
It's interesting you should use that as an example, because years ago I used to row, like in shells, with a team of women and other, co-ed. And there was a period of that time where we would travel around and compete in other communities, other states, and that kind of a thing. And we didn't always know where we were going to stay. And we would often have to just flop, with sleeping bags wherever somebody offered us a house, and so on. It wasn't like we were staying in hotels. In fact, there was one woman on the crew who said, for her, roughing it was going sleeping at a Holiday Inn. For the rest of us, basically, if I had a flat surface, that was enough.
Right.
Right? It wasn't going to last forever. But I've reached the point in my life that if I don't have just the perfect little pillow, I can't sleep well. And I feel like the Princess and the Pea, it's like, what happened to me where I could just, sleep almost anywhere, even vertically. And if I had to, because, I needed my sleep and, in order to compete the next day. So that the reason I share that is because it's bringing out to me that how our standards of the needs can change over time as
Right.
well. Yes, shelter is important. It breaks my heart every day when I drive in certain areas where you can see a lot of people camped out in the on the side of the road. Particularly, there's a one place downtown across from the basketball center where this one man would sleep. I don't know how he managed it, but he was just stuck more or less in a near a chain link fence where there was a lot of trash trees, and had a little, not a tent, but a little cover there.
Yeah.
And on bitter days, it just, broke my heart. Um, so what are we learning here, Karen? What do you think that is important for people to be thinking about, particularly as we're going into what for a lot of people is a reflective time of year, and the opportunity to get triggered by a lot of old baggage as we're interacting with people over the holidays as a rule.
Well, I know for me, what I get out of this is when I start to spiral thinking that I'm not meeting my needs or wants. Um, I now, take a step back and try to reflect on what I do have and how I have the choice to make it better or worse. And sometimes I'll think about, well, if I don't do these things, it's going to get worse. And I will start picturing that in my head. And it's like, whoa, I better stop because I was okay where I was. But if I want to make it better, then I have choices. And especially at the holiday time, you know, so many of us are watching Hallmark movies and seeing things on social media that, oh, everybody else has this perfect life. Well, I have to remind myself that, most people are only going to post what looks pretty rather than looks ugly. And so maybe their life is perfect at the moment, but it doesn't mean it's perfect 24/7. And we can get through that if we start to have more confidence in ourselves. And, it took me close to 60 years to get to this point of saying, I don't have to be like everybody else. I can I can feel good about myself in this situation. And like we talked about before we came online, you know, every winter about this time, I come down with a cold and it started up this morning. And my first reaction was, I don't want to be sick. I can't be sick. I've got all these things to do. And instead, what I stopped myself and I said, okay, you better go take some additional vitamin C and you will get through it. And, you know, just find a way to cut it as short as you can, but live with it until it's gone. And that's what I'm doing as much as I'm stuffed up and, eating vitamin C for breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
Well, and so what you're reminding me of is the idea that that phrase that I use sometimes, that a client use, that it ain't nothing but something to do. Like, just, one step, one step, one step, and just get through it. The other parts that I think I would like people to remember, particularly this, I'm going to call it a reflective, make a big assumption, this reflective time of year, whether people make resolutions or not, is that, our growth is cyclical and multidimensional. And I'm talking about the how we view the world and so on. I read a statistic recently that I think it was a Time magazine cover. I didn't see the cover. I think I saw a promotion about the cover. And they had a baby on the cover, and it basically said this child, so the baby was maybe under a year, will probably live to be 142 years old. And that was a really sobering thought. I thought, certainly I'd want to be in good health. I wouldn't want to be a decrepit little person. Or, as an adult, if I'm 142, and then it just, I was thinking about the hierarchy and so on. And how that occurred. I've had some friends who were interested in cryogenics, And I thought, I don't know if I'd want to come back and, not know anybody. It
Right.
would require a lot of personal growth and so on to embrace those things. So anyway, it may sound like I'm rambling, but in my head, there's a connection here. And the idea about our needs have to be revisited from time to time and really, you know, paid attention to so that we can evolve more in a more nuanced way and with our new perspectives. But, the point of the podcast is very intentionally, with intentionality, so that we can see opportunities where we have self-actualization and where we might want more of it. And so not to be compartmentalized, that I haven't fully left, maybe the second level tier. I mean, I have to say that was a little sobering for me, but it was all or nothing. And then, I had to admit, well, no, I am a little higher on the hierarchy in some areas. So I think specifically for me, growth isn't linear. So if I had any lessons to share in this conversation, it's evolving and multi-layered. And if we think of our those, areas of life, the wheel of life as more of a spiral, we can be looking for opportunities for different insights and opportunities to align our actions with it, with what we want more of, and changing our perspective, as you were mentioning, on what we don't want more of. So that's what I'm going to encourage everybody to do as we're going through and getting the opportunity to be triggered. As Ram Dass said one time, you think you're evolved, go home for 3 days. And he's talking about your home of origin generally, I guess. And the unstated part was, and see how much you get triggered,
Right.
just because there's a lot of that old stuff still flying around in that cyclone, in that tornado, that might come around and hit us. So those are my words for the holiday season, so to speak.
I love it. So you mentioned in passing, you have a new program that you're going to be starting in February. Can you tell us a little bit about it?
So it's a refreshed version of some of the programs where I've been certified. The primary focus is on particular insights and so on. And I'm not doing it after the new year per se. I mean, directly after the new year, because I think we're all bombarded by
Mhm.
post-holiday activities and just trying to get it on, some traction again. So I'm basically calling it, like a Valentine's gift for yourself, for the year. And so it'll be the self-sabotage to self-command boot camp, starting off with that. And then I have some other things that are going to follow that I'm really excited about to share with people. So
That,
anyway,
that
I'll be posting about that really soon.
that sounds really good because I will tell you, um, this is a time of year that too many of us allow ourselves to become sabotage.
Mhm.
So for those of you out there, go look up the word, um, understand what it means, and try to be kind to yourself because I spent too many years not being kind. And what a difference it makes when you can just say some nice things to yourself. So,
Yeah, it starts with us and it emanates from
absolutely.
there.
Well, have a great holiday, and we will see you in 2025.
All right, see you then. I
Take
can't
care.
wait.
Bye
All
bye.
right, bye-bye.